My dad called me to let me know that he had thought long and hard and that he and Mom would no longer be attending the wedding. Before I could even react, he went on to say that this also meant that he would not be walking me down the aisle. I asked him if there was a specific reason why, and he informed me that Vicky was going to be moving to a new place soon, which my parents had helped her find, and since I was going to be excluding her from the wedding, she had decided to host a housewarming party that same day so they would be attending that instead of my wedding. I felt a mix of shock and disbelief wash over me as I processed my father's words. The realization that my own sister's housewarming party took precedence over my wedding was a bitter pill to swallow, exacerbating the sense of hurt and betrayal that I had always felt for years. I simply told him that I understood and I hung up the call. Although I tried to act brave in front of my dad, deep down, the pain of rejection cut deeper than words could express. When I informed Rob, he was furious about how insensitive my parents could be after they were the ones who had insisted on being invited. He was the one who gave me the idea that I should ask my grandfather, since he and his grandmother were basically there in my life more than my parents. I agreed, so I called up my grandparents and asked them if they would be willing to walk me down the aisle at my wedding. Tears welled up in my eyes as I spoke, overcome with emotion at the thought of how much they meant to me. "You and Grandpa have always been there for me," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "You've been more than just grandparents to me, you've been like parents. And I can't imagine anyone else I'd rather have by my side on my wedding day." My grandparents didn't even hesitate before saying yes. They told me how honored they would be to walk me down the aisle, and unlike my parents, they would not disappoint me. Their words reassured me, and in that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace and contentment wash over me. With my grandparents by my side, I knew that I had a family who loved me unconditionally, and accepted me for who I was, flaws and all. I also talked to my in-laws about this, and Rob's parents assured me that they did not care if my parents didn't attend, and that regardless of their attendance, they were delighted to witness and support our union. My wedding is in 2 days, and today I woke up to several missed calls from my dad. I called him back thinking it was an emergency, and when he picked up, he asked me if it was true that my grandparents were walking me down the aisle. I told him yes, that was true, and then my dad went off about how disrespectful this was to have asked my grandparents.
You can now check if there is a part 2 by pressing share and more.
I reminded him how he was the one who had declined to come to my wedding, so I didn't see why he was so upset. My dad went on to yell at me about how he and Mom were just trying to make me see the wrong of my ways, and that they thought that by declining the invitation, it would teach me a lesson. He went on to say how it was he and Mom who had raised me and paid for my food and education, so my grandparents had no right to replace him. I tried to reason with him, explaining that my grandparents had been there for me in ways he and Mom never were, but he wouldn't listen. He also told me how I had done nothing but alienate everyone from me, and this was all my fault. Since this conversation, I have been wondering if I really did something wrong here. Ida for asking my grandparents to walk me down the aisle? Update 1. Wow, I did not expect so many people would comment on my post. I have seen a lot of advice and suggestions on how I should approach this situation. I do agree that I need to cut off my parents permanently because their constant back and forth is exhausting and is starting to affect my mental health. I don't want them in my life when they have consistently shown me that Vicky is always their first priority. My parents are indeed selfish, and I have known that for a long time. However, how can a child just stop loving his/her parents? It's a much easier thing to say, but it's very difficult to actually do it. However, for my mental peace, I have no choice but to do this so I can enjoy my wedding tomorrow. Update 2. Sorry for the lack of update this past month, but I have been quite busy since my wedding. First of all, yes, my wedding went quite well, with my grandparents by my side as I walked down the aisle. Despite the absence of my parents, I felt a deep sense of joy as I exchanged vows with Rob, committing to spend the rest of our lives together. My girlfriends and I danced the night away, and I can't begin to describe how important it is to stay in touch with your childhood friends no matter what, because sometimes they are your chosen family. During the reception, I did feel a twinge of sadness at the realization that my parents were not there to share in this special moment, especially as I watched Rob's parents and cousins giving speeches to him. However, I took solace in the knowledge that I had made the right decision for myself, prioritizing my own well-being and happiness. Some of my girlfriends did give speeches, sharing memories of our experiences and the bond that had carried us through both good times and bad. In the days following the wedding, Rob and I went for our honeymoon, which his parents had paid for as a wedding gift. I spent all my days just lazing around and enjoying myself with my husband. I feel so giddy every time I look at Rob and realize that he is married to me now. As I had mentioned earlier, I did cut off my parents by blocking them from everywhere.
You can now check if there is a part 3 by pressing share and more.